My name is Lori Foster Morales. I'm on the Board of Governors of Florida Bar, and I'm one of the folks that helped organize this incredible symposium focusing on health and wellness. It really is a takeoff of an entire year, which we have really, as the Board of Governors, as the Florida Bar, recognized the need for us to focus on, the body, mind, and soul of our members. I hope it's the beginning of a long discussion that we have, that we continue to have. I would ask the folks that were on the special committee with me, I know Joe Vegas, would you stand up for a moment? Is anyone else on the special committee? Oh, Ben. Thank you guys for really being my right hands and my helpers, and none of this could have been done without you guys, so thank you. Christine Milbury from the bar, amazing. All of you, many of you, I've spoken to you along the way. You were provided great support and encouragement. And we thought what would come of that, at least for this convention, that we could take some of the folks that I know have something to add to this discussion and provide to you sort of really nice nuggets of information. Some great information. And I know that this is going to be exciting and fun because they're not going to be long speeches, but I know they're going to be informative, and everyone has something really fabulous to offer. Our first speaker is our most recent appointment to the Supreme Court, Justice Alan Lawson. Let me just get my little notes out. Justice Lawson grew up in Tallahassee, local guy. He attended FSU. At College of Law. His first job was with the Miami firm of Steele, Hector, and Davis. There's always a connection. My husband first worked there. He previously served on the 9th Judicial Circuit Court and then on the 5th District Court of Appeal. And when he was the chief judge of that appellate court, he was aptly selected by our governor. Justice Lawson has a real heart and soul for this topic. He came to one of our committee meetings, and he didn't come by to do a wave, to do a sort of a parade wave. He came and he sat and he spoke to us, and he was so passionate that I thought, what a great way to kick off this event. So without further ado, I asked Justice Lawson to come up and speak with us. Yes.
Do I need the microphone or okay? Thank you so much. Let me just ask if it would surprise you to know that the most stressful points in my career and the least happy or well I felt in terms of my career were the months following my selection as a partner at Steele, Hector, and Davis, and the months following, after the excitement wore off, my appointment to the Florida Supreme Court. Would that surprise you? No? Okay. Let me tell you how I handled each and what I learned along the way. I left the firm because I thought that it was my circumstances that were making me miserable. I would go to work every day and say, I hate the practice of law. Now, that really wasn't that's what I thought was going on. That really wasn't going on. I was stressed, so my personal relationships were not good. It was a very difficult time for my wife, for me and my kids. But I removed the external stressors and ended up with a government job, still doing litigation ultimately, and found out that I really didn't hate the practice of law. I loved the practice of law, and I had less stress and dealt with life better. Onto the circuit bench and then onto the appellate bench, which is the least stressful job you can have in the legal profession. There are no real deadlines. You have the time that you need to work on all of the cases that you need to give everyone all the attention that you think it needs. There really aren't a lot of external stressors and pressure. When I made the decision to apply for the Supreme Court, I knew that things were going to change. And I knew that I would be heading into an extraordinarily stressful position with a lot of demands on my time, on my focus, that it would take me away from my wife. We like to spend a lot of time together. We live in Orlando. The job's in Tallahassee, so I'm going back and forth. We're separated a lot. And so I was prepared for that, sort of. When I took the position and started experiencing those things, I started feeling exactly like I did as a partner in Steele, Hector, and Davis. I was like, what have I done? Because I was grieving the lifestyle that I lost. I was grieving the loss of time with my wife. It was very difficult for her, and she expressed that to me regularly. and that's, that can be difficult. So I knew that I needed to do something about this, and that there were two ways to handle it. You could cocoon in a job like Florida Supreme Court. You could not get out and go to the meetings that you probably should go to. You could not accept any speaking engagements. You could do all that kind of thing and just go decide cases, and that's what the public sees, and that would be fine. That would be okay. Or I could take a different path. So I was not smart enough or educated enough to know that there were people that could really help me navigate that in a shortcut sort of way. So I did the only thing I knew to do as a trained lawyer, and I started digging in all the spare time I had and researching this topic, right? And trying to figure out strategies and things like that would help me. What I learned was absolutely fascinating and life-changing, as you can imagine. And we've come so far in the last decade, little plus, in our understanding of neuropsychology and neurobiology, how the brain works. And that's what we're talking about, because what I realized is that the circumstances of your life do not determine your well-being. Your well-being is determined right up here. So, neuropsychology. Carol Dweck, at 71 years old, is now one of the world's leading researchers in this area. She's at Stanford University, a Yale graduate, doctorate at Yale. She's a researcher in this area. And she will tell you, or would tell you if she was here, that the direction of her research was set by two 10-year-old boys in one of her very first experiences. Because what she was trying to research and experiment was how we deal with failure. And children are easy folks to set up for failure. We all are, actually. And so what she would do is she would give them puzzles. And she'd start with an easy puzzle, and then she would give them a puzzle she knew they did not have the mental capacity to solve. Just wasn't going to happen. So she had one 10-year-old who quickly figured out that he could not do this, and he looked up with a smile on his face and he said, "I love a challenge," and kept trying anyway. And then a lot of kids with different reactions go by, and then she had another one that came up and said, "I was really hoping that this would be informative," and just kept at it anyway, even though he knew he couldn't do it. In more modern experience, you do something like this. Here's the basic experiment. You take children and you give them a test that's above their level, like a math test or something like that. You know it's above the level of every kid. And what they have learned, in layman's terms, is that basically there are two groups. And there's a spectrum, but there are two groups. In one group, and you can see what's going on in the brain now. You can actually get pictures of it. You can see what areas of the brain do what. They know that now. We didn't know that not too very long ago. And in one group, the brain shuts down completely, and you can see it. Nothing lights up. Those kids, they've determined, are telling themselves that I do not have the ability to do this. Basically, they're telling themselves that my intelligence level is fixed, right? What's the common way that psychologists taught this years ago. They thought intelligence level was fixed. But they're saying, I just sort of am who I am. I can't do this. So then they start thinking, well, that guy, he's probably not as smart as I am, and they start trying to come up with excuses for why they are going to fail, because they look at this as an opportunity for failure because they know they can't do it. The other group of kids, their brain lights up. This problem is not within their current ability. But what they're telling themselves is that with hard work and effort, I can figure this out and learn this. In other words, they're telling themselves that I can grow. She calls that a growth mentality and calls the other a fixed mentality. She's got a best-selling book called Mentality, and you should get it. But this has broad implications. But the bottom line is that what we tell ourselves, the conversation that goes on in our minds all the time, determines who we're going to be. Because both those sets of kids were right. The set that thought that they were not going to grow were not going to grow because they weren't going to put the work in and they weren't going to challenge themselves, and they viewed difficult circumstances or difficult opportunities as an opportunity for failure. The kids who thought that they could grow were right because they viewed very difficult circumstances not as failure when they didn't get it. It's like Edison said, I didn't fail 10,000 times when I ultimately made the light bulb. I just had to figure out 10,000 ways it didn't work on the way to figuring out one that did. And that's the mindset. But it's all this talk that goes on sometimes and mostly subconsciously, and it affects everything that we do in every area of our life. Let me give you an example that relates to anxiety. And, oh gosh, I'm running out of time. But the real experts are coming, so that's all right. When neuroscientists now know, of course, that when you experience something and your brain registers it as a threat in the amygdala, that the amygdala sends a signal to the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus triggers the adrenal glands, and you have epinephrine or adrenaline that courses through your body. It releases blood sugars in your body, and a cascade of effects. If the stress continues, if the challenge continues, the concern continues, then another system gets triggered that puts cortisol in your body, and we call that stress, and it compounds and you get more stressful and more stressful and more stressful. The consequences, I think you understand. Your immune system is degraded, your blood pressure goes up, all sorts of physical things that literally can lead to death. I mean, that's why doctors and lawyers don't live as long, because we haven't learned how to handle stress. Okay, so when I was living in Orlando as a practicing lawyer and a judge, I had a 7-mile commute through downtown Orlando on I-4 each way, okay? And I would get in the car and come to a stop when I got on I-4, and there were 3 entry ramps onto I-4 on the way from my house to the downtown exit that I took. And it was not an uncommon occurrence for someone who was 4 cars behind me to come up to the entry ramp and decide that they were going to get 4 cars ahead, and they would pull out, and they would go around, and then they would squeeze back in, right? Have you all experienced that? Okay. How do you react to that? Depending on my underlying level of stress, how much cortisol is flowing through your system, because if you have high underlying stress, then the system triggers faster, because that's what the purpose is, right? Your whole stress response system has you at high alert. So the cortisol, the adrenaline starts to flow faster, and I would get so freaking mad. It would make me so angry. Depending on the underlying level of stress, I mean, I could say things I cannot repeat now because it could get me in trouble with the JQC, and would think things. And if it was really stressful, I would decide I'm going to take action. And so I would go over to block the car, right? Oh, I've done that, yeah. So that, because he is not going to get in front of me. Now, here's the problem with what's the conversation that's going on there in my mind? Because, that's not a real threat at all. It's not a threat. My brain just reacted as if it was, and I went into full response mode, flight or fight. What's going on? Okay. So these emotional centers of our brain that trigger these amazing responses that we need to survive are very coarse. They're very sophisticated in one sense, but they're very coarse in another. And any threat will do. Our basic human need, one is for certainty and security, which would involve a physical threat. But one of our other basic human needs is for and I've lost the word, but a sense of significance, right? That's the word, significance. So, we grew up and achieve a lot of what we achieve because we need to feel important. We need to feel significant. And so what I think when I analyzed it was going on is that my brain in its unsophisticated area that's going to have this reaction thinks that because I've told myself this enough, I'm just at least just as important as that guy, right? I'm just as important as he is or she is. Why are they disrespecting me? Why does that person think that they have a right to jump 4 cars ahead of me on the interstate when I'm sitting in the same lane of traffic? It's a threat to my sense of significance if you really analyze what's going on. I mean, that's the conversation in crude sense. I mean, that's the best I can do in terms of putting words on it. Now, I'm going to have to cut this really short. I have 56 seconds left. Okay. How do you change the conversation? First, you have to be aware of the conversation, because generally we aren't. We don't ever stop to think behind the fact that I react this way. And the whole growth mentality thing, it's not just intelligence, it's everything. We think, I react this way because this is who I am, my personality's set. Your personality's not set, nothing about you is set. It is all unwritten. What you're going to be like tomorrow is unwritten at this point. It depends on the conversations that are going to go on today in your head. So, to change the conversation, you first have to change the focus. And as in most of life, if you're focused on you, then it's a problem. Okay, what if I told myself, instead of this person was disrespecting me, what if I told myself that this person just got a call before they left their house and found out that a loved one had had an incident and was in the hospital and was doing everything they could to get there in time? What if I told myself that? What would my reaction be? It would be compassion. Now, do you know what neurobiology tells you compassion does? It triggers a series of hormonal responses and everything else that has the exact opposite response of threat. It calms your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system. It's called the parasympathetic. It is in every way healing and restorative and gives meaning and purpose to life and that kind of thing. Now, the problem is you don't want to lie to yourself, right? Because probably that person didn't just have that call. So, that's not a workable solution to sort of lying to yourself. But what you can, by changing the focus to the other person, recognize that what does that person's life have to be like, really? That their stress levels are so high, that they're suffering so much, that they think that they have to zoom out and zoom in and risk life and upset other people to do that. You're looking at a very miserable person, and you can think, that's not what I want to be, and feel a sense of compassion for that person if you change the conversation in your head. I wish we had about 6 hours because I've only scratched the surface. But the truth of the matter is that the most important conversation that you and I will ever have is a conversation that goes on between the two ears that we have on our head It goes on all the time. It affects your relationships. It reflects how you process everything. And we have, one of the benefits that you have as a bar member is the wellness coaching thing. And I'll just leave you with that, because coaches, and you're going to hear from some of them, they're trained to help you figure out what your conversation is and help you explore what conversation you really want to have the kind of life that you want to live. That's what they do. And they have the language to put that into. And so I could have saved myself a whole lot of time, energy, and effort if I had known at the beginning that these resources were available. But I can tell you now that I am thriving in my job at the Florida Supreme Court. I'm enjoying it. Our relationship, Julie and I, is outstanding. And it's because I'm putting into practice the kind of things that we all can get help with just a phone call. I'm going to say one more thing, and I'm sorry, but because a change in focus will change your thinking and it'll change your life. And we talked about this when I met with you. That's why a practice of gratitude is so powerful. Because if you decide to do something, and you can do this at no cost today, that you're going to write down every day 5 things that you're grateful for before the end of the day, okay? Do the 30-day experiment with this. And they have to be different. Now, the first day may be easy, it may be hard, because if you aren't focused on what you're grateful for right now, it's going to be hard. And if you start thinking, okay, yeah, I'm grateful for that. You can't be general like my spouse or my significant other, because then you'll use that one, right? And you won't have it for tomorrow. So you have to think of something specific about, an interaction that you had with her today or something like that. Well, after the second day, at least you're going to go at the end, if you wait till the end of the day, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to do this. So I can't think of all these things. So you'll start the third day cognizant of thinking about what am I grateful for? And you'll start seeing things that you didn't see, right? And the truth is that if we go through life focused on the things that we have and the things that make life good, versus what we don't have, it makes all the difference. So change the conversation.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your conversation, your inner conversation, your gratefulness. I certainly got a lot out of that, and you all did too. Our next speaker is a dear friend of mine, Ron Conzoli. Ron is a member of the Board of Governors of the Florida Bar. He is a shareholder of Ray Robinson. He's a litigator, so you don't want to stress comes with that. There's all sorts of litigation. He's a very involved member of his local bar association, and I know that he has some very important, great techniques to live a happier and healthier life and to be a more effective practitioner. I look forward to hearing from him. Thank you.
I am going to share with you all today my story of emotional crisis and recovery. And my hope is through telling you about my experience, we will continue to destigmatize mental illness, and we will continue to destigmatize the importance of seeking recovery. 2 years ago, I was a shareholder in a law firm. I had a good book of business. I was on the Board of Governors. I'd been married to my wife for 18 years. I had 2 wonderful teenage boys. I had a gym membership that I went to religiously, a kayak, a puppy. And I expect that from the outside, looking at my life, I'm sure it looked good. But I'm here to tell you all, 2 years ago, here and here, I was not well. I was very, very unhappy. It was a time in my career and a time in my life where I was incredibly busy, more busy than I'd ever been before, which we as litigators thrive upon. The more work we have, the more billable time we have, the bigger cases we have, the more successful we are. So if that was the marker of success, man, I was hitting home runs. I was angry. And the anger would come out in the most unusual of places. I'd be angry at mediation. I'd be angry at my opposing counsel. I'd fight with my wife. I was overly concerned to the point of neurosis that I would make a mistake. And I would dot every I and I would cross every T, and then I would do it again and again because I feared that somehow I would miss something and mess something up. I came to a place where I had so much trouble sleeping that I would take 2 Advil PMs or 2 Tylenol PMs every night just to try to calm myself down so I could sleep. And my concerns about being perfect in my practice, my concerns about making no mistakes translated into overly critical analysis of myself. I wasn't doing a good enough job. I wasn't billing enough. I wasn't bringing in enough work. I was never happy with what I was doing. And therefore, internally, I was unhappy as well. So 2 years ago, and it's not to the day, but roughly 2 years ago, the week before my crisis, every day that week was progressively worse. And by that I mean Monday was bad. I was very upset, very sad, very emotional. Tuesday was worse. Wednesday, I remember I'm on the phone with one of my law partners who's going to court, and we're talking about how to navigate through an issue, and I am just all over the map. I can't make up my mind. And he's saying, Ron, we just need to make a decision. And I'm so wound up that I'm struggling with just making the simplest of decisions. Thursday was worse than Friday, and then Friday comes. And I will never forget Friday. Very profound moment, and it was a pivotal moment in my life. I'm in my conference room with one of my law partners. We're talking through an issue. We're getting ready for an evidentiary proceeding. We're in the middle of talking about one issue, and I just stop in mid-sentence. And I just start to cry in my conference room. And all the emotion came out. It all just spilled out right then and right there. And it's funny, my law partner, he says, because you're not really prepared for this. You know, you're going in ready to talk about law, and your partner's having this watershed moment. And he says to me, he says, if you have nothing to do today, Ron, you should go home. But if you have something you need to do today, you should go home. I did something very smart. I knew a psychiatrist, and I called him right then and right there. I spoke to his receptionist. I told her, I said, something is really wrong. I really need help. And within 5 or 10 minutes, he called me back. And I told him about my emotions and how I couldn't control how upset I was. He said, Ron, we need to get you to a therapist, and I need to get you into my office. The very next day, my journey to health began. And I met with my therapist for the first time. I met with my therapist, and we started to deconstruct my life. What was going on? What were the stressors in my life? And that following Monday, I met with a psychiatrist. And very quickly, between the psychiatrist and the psychologist, who's my therapist, it was diagnosed that I was suffering from depression. I was suffering from depression. I was suffering from anxiety. And there were a lot of sources of that. Some of them were this profession. This profession was a driving force in my depression. But it was not the only factor. We all come to this profession with a past life. And my past life included traumas. I'd been the victim of a violent home invasion when I was in college. And I'd had other traumas in my life. And so with my therapist, we needed to work through those issues. And with my psychiatrist, he said, Ron, depression, anxiety, we need to get you on medication. You need to receive medication for your condition. And I have been on Prozac from that point to the present point, and I will probably be on medication the rest of my life. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. People take medication for heart conditions. They take medication for cholesterol. You get the flu and your doctor prescribes a Z-Pak. I take Prozac because it helps me with my serotonin. It's fine. And it works. Now, I'd like to be able to tell you that within the first couple of weeks with my therapist, everything got wonderful. It was all rainbows and unicorns, and my life was, just perfect. And that's not the case. For those of you who have gone through therapy, or know those who go through therapy, it's hard work. It's hard work. It's like no pain, no gain in terms of what you invest in therapy. And I was all in because I needed it. I needed help. I was going 2 times a week. I was going an hour for each session, and I did that for months. And I can tell you all, for the first 2 or 3 months of my therapy, I actually went lower. Because I had hit a point in my life where I caught it just in time. But I got so low that I didn't want to go to work. I didn't want to talk to my friends. I wanted to give up all my worldly possessions. I wanted to divorce myself of everything that I had right then and right there. But I had the support I needed. I had a team in place. I had a loving wife. I had a family. And I had the support I needed. And slowly but surely, things got better. And they did get better. And for those of you who've been through therapy, not only do you know that it's an investment, you have to really commit to it, and you learn about it. At least my experience is you sort of unpackage your history, but you learn techniques. You learn things to do on how to treat your life and how to navigate through experiences. And I'll give you all one that really is sort of the foundational technique for my life. And Stacy and I were talking about this a short while ago. It's called radical acceptance. Radical acceptance. And it's going to sound really simple, but it's actually hard to do. And I don't think you've ever actually mastered it. You just keep getting better at it. Radical acceptance, and it's actually, Justice Lawson, it's another good way to treat that scenario where someone cuts you off on the road. Radical acceptance. So a good example is you're at a red light, and you're running late for court. Heart palpitations. This is bad. So you're trying to get to court on time, and you hit that red light. And what do most of us do? We start going, how did this happen? How? That white car that got in front of me, it's their fault. I shouldn't have talked to the neighbor when I got in my car right before I drove him. It's their fault. Or I shouldn't have eaten that bagel at the house. I should have gotten my car quicker. It's my fault. Who, what, where, why? And you start going through this exercise in your head, trying to find blame and trying to explain to yourself how this catastrophic thing has happened. And you're getting worked up, right? That's what happens. Just like when the car cuts you off on the road. You're getting worked up. So what ultimately happens? Well, the light is going to change, and you're ultimately going to get to the courthouse. But now, not only have you worked yourself up in a lather at the red light, now when you get to the courthouse, all that emotion, all that energy that you've built up is now going to carry on into the courtroom because now you're wound up. And you are going to be less effective because you're still going to be... Radical acceptance says, I don't like the fact that I hit a red light. Who would? But I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to accept it. I'm going to radically accept the fact that I'm at a red light, and eventually the light's going to change, and then I'm going to drive to the courthouse. And when I get to the courthouse, I'm going to be much calmer. I didn't spend all that energy worked up about who, what, where, why at the red light. These are the types of techniques, and it sounds very simplistic, but trust me, it's harder to do. It's like when you're at the grocery store and someone cuts in front of you. Radically accept it. Just okay. Don't get wound up about it. These are the things that you learn, that I have learned in therapy, and obviously there's a lot more to it than that teach you how to live your life. So, 2 years later, right? 2 years of therapy. I still see my therapist. I see her once every 2 or 3 weeks, and I probably will for a very long time. I can tell you all, without a doubt, that I am living the best life. The best life that I have ever lived. And it's not as if through the therapist and psychiatrist I've been teleported back to a time before I hit crisis. Oh no, I'm living an entirely different life. My life is nothing like it was before. I see the world differently. I love more fully. I reach out to folks wholeheartedly, and I see the world around me. And I know this sounds silly, but I see nature all around me, and beautiful things all around me that I never saw before, that I blow right by. You're going to laugh. There's a little roundabout on the way to work, and there's always this bunny that comes there in the roundabout. And I never saw that bunny before. I love that bunny. I see that. I do, man. 2 years of therapy, and I fell in love with a bunny. But really, it has transformed who I am. And I needed that. I needed it. I needed it because I needed it chemically, and I needed it emotionally. And part of why I continue with my therapist is because now I'm living a different life. A life that I lived 44 years one way, and now I'm living the rest of my life another way. My therapist helps me navigate through this new life. She helps me work through it. Because life throws you curveballs. My life is stressful, just like everybody's life. My life is difficult. I have anxiety, but it's so much different for me now. So my hope for you all here and for everybody who's watching here, there is absolutely nothing to be ashamed about or embarrassed about in terms of seeking therapy and getting therapy. There is nothing to be ashamed about or embarrassed about seeking a psychiatrist. I waited a full year before I told my mom and dad that I was in therapy because I was ashamed and embarrassed, and that's wrong. Embrace the opportunity to get healthy, to get the help you need, and I promise you it will change your life. Thank you.
Sorry. Next, we have Professor Lawrence Krieger from Florida State University, and he is a really renowned expert on the issue of lawyer happiness. Imagine that. There's an expert out there. And while we've been looking at this for the last year, Professor Krieger has made this a lifetime commitment. So with that, I would ask Professor Krieger to come up and share with us some thoughts.
I'm going to do a PowerPoint. Do we have a clicker here? It's a huge honor to be here. Hello, everybody on TV. First, did Michael leave? Michael came in. Let's just appreciate Michael and Dory for making this a project for this year. This is amazing. The most important thing. Did you know when you're not happy, you're not effective? That's what all the research shows. I was one of those people. Actually, I still am. I was a litigator for 11 years before I was fortunate to get to FSU. I was also meditating for a long time, which kept me alive while I was litigating. I practice acceptance a lot. I'm still the guy that cuts in front of you. And I don't know if you live out Thomasville Road, but I've got that white car. And my partner keeps saying, "You're such a safe driver. I love driving there." I say, "Really?" Because I hate the roundabout that I have to go around in my neighborhood because it slows me down and I'm always late. But the meditation saves me. and work that I love saves me. So I've accepted the fact I'm impatient. I like to move fast. I don't think it's going to change, but I'm that guy. So no holier than thou here. I want you all to start getting hooked into this pineapple. My administrator, Mary Ann, likes to put pineapples on things, represents that fulfillment and such, because I've got a handout here for you. It's great what we've heard. These are some things you can take home to change your focus. 5 minutes twice a week is what I'm recommending. 5 minutes twice a week, we'll get to it. All right, change it to help you change the conversation. So I started researching what makes lawyers happy. I saw a lot of lawyers that weren't happy. A guy that I litigated against shot himself in the foot in the Palm Beach County courthouse and then ran out of the courthouse with all the police from the snack bar chasing him. And I wasn't that guy, but, I've seen it. So we're going to talk about what makes lawyers happy. I've got a bunch of research on that, how to make it happen in your life, and why success doesn't work. We're going to do it in 11 minutes and 56 seconds. This is a study that you can find on ssrn.com website called What Makes Lawyer Happy. You can read the whole thing. There's about 35 factors we studied, like, do you have children? Did you make partner yet? What's your income? Are you in public interest? Okay? Do you exercise? Etc. It gives you numbers. Okay, big study, thousands of lawyers and a whole bunch of judges. The happiness that we study is a scientifically validated definition of happiness. Got 10 positive moods, 10 negative moods, and a whole bunch of questions about life satisfaction. So generally, if you feel good most of the time and you're real satisfied with your life, you're happy, right? And if you're depressed, down, anxious, tense, and so forth, not so much. Okay, I'll talk about that later. The New York Times covered this article. I like to say this because a lot of successful people read the New York Times. And this was the most shared article in the New York Times for 2 days. They put it in the national news. And the reason is that success does not make us happy. Sorry, I was just doing this research when this came around. But something else does, and that's what we want to learn about. And then we can make it happen. Not saying success is bad. We'd all like to have it. So it's not that there's lots of good things about success. Just get clear it's not going to make you happy. Okay, that's the research, and you'll see it here in numbers. Okay, the success factors we studied, you can see them listed across the top here. Money, prestige, honors, and so forth. And then we contrasted those with human dynamics, what goes on within us and between us, to see what makes people happy. And here's the answer. The success factors start 2/3 of the way down with the little gray bars, okay? And they go down from about 19% on this scale to 0. And then the human factors, which I'm going to go through with you, start at 30% and go up to 66%. So it was very clear that success is not making people happy, but the human factors are. Here's a breakdown of those bars in a way you can read in the same order above the line. We're going to go through those factors as to what they are. But you can see the success factors were income, debt, class rank in law school, school rank for your law school, whether a person made partner yet or not, and whether they had been on law review. Okay, why doesn't success work very well? Then we're going to talk about what the success factors are. What the happiness factors are. So here's why success doesn't work very well. Think about it. It's outside you, and your life is inside you. So no matter what you get out there, if you can't feel it in here, you got no happiness, all right? And when I get a raise, I don't get depressed. I'm happy to get a raise, but it doesn't stick very long. We all know that. So they're outside. The other thing about these success factors that you'll see is they tend to separate us. They distinguish us from each other. Zero sum. One person makes partner, somebody else didn't. Somebody got the raise, 8 other people didn't. Right? Somebody's in the top 10% of the class, 9 people aren't. So they separate us, and we can't feel them. Human factors that we'll get into are within us and between us in a meaningful way, and so they connect us to either ourselves, others, or things that matter, like work that we care about. Okay? And then the really big important thing here is because we all want some success, and we all want these human dynamics, what we don't want is to be depressed. And what happens is when we get distracted by success, then we use it to displace the rest of our life. So we talk about, we love my kids and da-da, love this and that, but, taking depositions in Chicago and didn't see my kids for 4 days. And so we have to limit that so that we don't get depressed. Okay, here's the human factors. The thing I like to say at the outset, notice how these are all things that connect us. And what I'm learning from this research as I think about it more is that as human beings, we need to feel connected to many things that matter to us. Ourself, others, our work, our play, it all has to be meaningful. Okay, here's that top need for authenticity or autonomy. And what it means is that we're true to ourselves, we're true to our values, we're honest, we have integrity. So inside and outside match. And this has this 66% correlation with well-being. What these correlations mean is that when this independent factor, authenticity, goes up, the lawyer says, yes, I feel like I know myself and I'm true to myself and I'm true to my values. When that goes up by a unit, the lawyer's well-being goes up 2/3 of that, 66%. A huge bump to well-being. Okay? Remember, or you can look at it in your handout, that bar chart, you can see the numbers. When a lawyer's income goes up a full unit, mathematically, their well-being goes up 19%. So 66% for telling the truth, 19% for getting more money. What do you think? Okay? And so that's the way it goes. Now, so if you love the poor and want to help the poor, but that's going to keep you poor, and then you got, your authenticity is going to tell you I should help the poor, but your kids want to go to college and so forth, then you have to work that out, and you will. Okay, second need, also 2/3 of a perfect correlation, relatedness to others. We feel close to others at home, at work, in a meaningful way, not just sitting next to them, but we connect. Okay? Everybody needs that. Again, when a lawyer's sense of relatedness to others goes up by a unit, their happiness goes up 2/3. So we got connectedness within oneself, connectedness to others. If you don't have those, it can be very hard to be happy. And the numbers here show it. And then connected to work. There's a couple of factors here. Internal motivation, which means that I choose my work or anything else, but primarily my work, because that's what we spend most of our time at, because I care about it and because I enjoy it. Care about it, enjoy it. Those are the two internal healthy motivations for doing anything in psychology. All the other motivations are not healthy. They may not be bad, but they're not going to make you happy. Okay? And this one has a 55% correlation. The other real high correlation is competence at work and in personal life as well. And when internal motivation goes up, knows you're doing it because it's important to you, the work itself, and you enjoy it, the work itself, you're actually good at it. Right? When you don't care about it, you don't care about it. All right, there's one more here that we're not going to try to cover in in a few minutes, but it's in your handout on the first page under the pineapple. This is a huge management tool. This showed up in our law student research and also our lawyer research. You want to retain associates, or in your public interest practice, wherever you are, you want happy kids who do well in school. You want to thrive. You want to help your spouse and your friends thrive, and so forth. Study up on autonomy support. It's explained in the paper, ssrn.com, and the handout here explains it to you. All right, so here's what we're going to get to now. And again, I want you, when you go home with this massive paper, hopefully look for the pineapple, because these are very practical things that you can spend 5 minutes on that will change your conversation. And it will change your conversation about these four most important things that will make you happier. I guarantee you, if you spend 5 minutes even once a week on this, honestly, you'll feel better, and you'll notice it immediately. You may have some growing pains because you realize, if you're honest with yourself, I'm not doing so well at this. I'm cutting corners on that. I was rude to da-da-da. I haven't been encouraging my kids, whatever it is. But that honesty gives you a chance to grow. Are you fixed, or are you growing, right? You want to grow, you got to grow. Or like we say where I work, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So the handout here gives you, and here they are, and I'm suggesting 5-minute reflections. Just pick one, and one that you like. There's 4 pages of them here, there's about 20 of them. Pick one you like, work on it once or twice, and then take small, tiny, even tiny actions based on what you find. Don't quit your job, right? Don't throw away your clothes, right? Just small things. You're probably right where you need to be, all right? So, I made a promise, only 3-minute reflection up here. So 3 times a week, 3 minutes, or 2 times a week, 5 minutes, whichever you like, okay? And you'll see when you look at your handout, and Christine was nice to print them one-sided, so you can actually do these the first time on the back. But why don't you just treat yourself really well and go on out, spend $7.99 and buy a nice journal. You're worth it, okay? And remember, lawyers hate to reflect, think about yourself, think about your relationships, think about, look at my work, do I like my work? We hate that. We all want to be out there doing stuff, right? But we lose the connections. When you lose the connections, the orange goes dry. There's no more juice in there, all right? So this is the way to put it back, really 5 minutes a week. And if you think about it, folks, I think are going to talk about mindfulness, meditation, emotional intelligence. All these things are going to relate to one of these big 4 well-being factors. Your relationship to yourself, to others. Okay, I'm out. So do this. 3 rules I'm going to suggest to you for a good life. The 3 things we really need: air, water, food, sleep. That's 4 things. The next 3 things are know yourself well and honor yourself. Be with other people and care about them. And express love in your work. Or, if you don't like the love word, express joy in your work. If those things aren't happening, these little reflections will help you do it. So good luck.
Thank you, Professor Krieger. You always provide me with great nuggets of information. I've listened to you speak before, and I really enjoy it. And I guess I should say thank you for the pineapples, right? That covers it all. Our next speaker is Mark Aguilar. He was born and raised in Miami Beach, actually. I've known him since he was a little boy. We grew up together. We were both prosecutors at the state attorney's office in Miami-Dade County. He's been litigating cases in South Florida. He's tried countless jury trials, has obtained numerous acquittals and hundreds of positive results for his clients in both state and federal court. He has, obviously incredible experience as both a trial attorney and a negotiator. He has been on all the lists of the best lawyers, and you may recognize him from his numerous appearances on local and national TV.
The issue is, do you have proof beyond it to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt? And these jurors, fighting back tears, some of them physically nauseous, had a duty under the law to find her not guilty, no matter how much that made me and others sick.
But trials, as you know, Dr. Phil, more than anyone, they're not about the truth. It's what the prosecution can prove.
Ludicrous.
Mark, why are you sleeping through Kelly's court?
I really I want to know, Mark.
Is it my turn? Thank you, Kimberly. The sheer length of her arguments affords me the opportunity to catch up on some needed rest.
Oh, put your wine in. Let's hear it.
I think it's ego that they chose not to bring the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in or the FBI, and I would tell them your ego's not your amigo.
They're getting ready to sue, and if I were that mother, Mark Eiglarsh, I would sue them for all they are worth.
Megan, I would help them pro bono. I'm outraged by the video.
I think I have an answer. I think it's in Mark's studio. Can you please cut to Mark's studio? Zero in on his studio for me, please. Mark, please give me a full screen. There. Mark, the fog.
Yes, Joe.
What's happening?
What are you talking about?
What have you done?
The fact that there are only 4 that have been questioned and 496 left means to me that this is going to be a slow, long, drawn-out process.
There was a poll recently of people who hate people, and apparently Casey Anthony was on the list of the most hated person in the United States, more hated than Sandusky and Bernie Madoff.
Do you think wow.
And by the way, you know who was number 2? This surprised me. Kim Kardashian?
Really?
For real.
Stop it.
For real. Number 2 is Kim Kardashian.
Oh, that's just jealousy. That's
Because they can't keep up with her.
Right.
That's the problem.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Eiglarsh, sitting in for my dear friend, Dr. Drew. Thank you so much for letting me keep the chair warm for you tonight.
How did it happen? So is it first degree? Is it second degree? Is it manslaughter?
So
if they don't have it, they acquit.
But I wouldn't want the burden of proof lowered to get the guy who killed my son. The minute we lower the burden of proof for Zimmerman, for Casey Anthony, for OJ, whoever else you think might have gotten away with it, then when you're arrested, that burden of proof is lowered and we all suffer.
Well, and Mark makes an excellent point here.
Listen, there's sex tapes in a murder trial.
Would you defend her? I mean, you've already taken the other.
Why am I on the hot seat here?
Because you said that you would not defend the
I'm
marathon.
going to take a pass on this one, too.
You're passing on everything.
I like the audience clapping, so I'm going to take a pass on this one. Thank you. Thank you, Florida Bar, for giving me the opportunity to tell you my story and share with you what I've learned. And when I see that montage, there are 2 primary thoughts that I have. Number 1, I love wearing makeup. And number 2, how happy I was every time I get to perform. I'm there helping people understand legal issues. I do it in an entertaining way. I'm in the flow. I'm doing what I love to do. It's the same way when I'm in front of a jury. But I'm also not always that happy. I thought I was the only one. I was actually miserable at times, and I didn't know why, and I certainly didn't want to share that with anybody. I lost my first child. My wife and I were halfway through our pregnancy, and that happened. We thought we were never going to get pregnant again. We got a puppy because we had so much love. We needed a puppy like we needed a hole in our head. We had a brand new home, and that puppy lived with us for a year before it died in a freak accident. We were miserable. Our life was challenged at the time. Professionally, I don't need to tell you what it's like to be a litigator. We live a very stressful life. People come to me to defend them when they've got problems. Those problems became my problems. Judges, some of them, make their problems my problems. Clients, they're putting their lives in my hands every day. I take that very seriously. It's very sacred to me. Very stressful. Prosecutors, some of them a little cantankerous. Every day, it was affecting my happiness. So there'd be highs. For me, it wasn't always low. There'd be tremendous highs and then lows minutes later, depending upon who cut me off in traffic, depending on how I was treated, depending on whether I got the plea offer I wanted. And it was up and down. I remember the day that I said, I need to change. My behavior had become intolerable to me. I was at a gas station and some woman was waving, "You got the thing, you got the thing." And I was so rude to her. I put my window down. I said, "What?" She said, "You got the thing." And I looked back, and I literally drove away from the gas station with the pump still in my tank. I will tell you, those are very expensive to replace. In my mindset, first, I said to the woman, "You couldn't have told me sooner?" Who does this? This is sick behavior. And of course, I'm negotiating with the gas station. You can't just pop it in? You're going to charge me that kind of money? I needed to do better. My family at the time, they needed me to do better. My angel needed for me to do better. And if anyone thinks I'm that flaky, I'm referring to my dog, Angel, my golden doodle. So I committed to trying to figure this out. And the bar wasn't around at the time with this wonderful wellness stuff. Thank you, Dory. Thank you to the bar. I didn't know I was alone. So I'm reading any books that I could possibly get. I'm traveling with my wife to hear different speakers around the country. I'm doing whatever it takes. And I compiled information that I thought one day I can use to help people. And I came up with all these realizations that I started to practice in my life. And I've got a few minutes to share with you the top 5 realizations. Great news, by the way. If you pick this up in the next 10 minutes, you'll have happiness guaranteed or your misery back. A little bit of an overpromise, I think so. First thing is that happiness is a decision. I was waiting around for somebody to make me happy, right? I had to first decide, I need to be happy. Now, there are those out there who say, who gives a crap about this happiness stuff? I just want more productivity for my employees, for myself, and that's what it's all about. Well, for you guys, I put together this slide. It pertains not only to the law practice, but all businesses. The benefits of being happy in the workplace include 20% better production out of your employees than companies with unhappy employees. 37% greater sales, 3 times more creative. The statistics make it very clear that happiness is the way to go. Okay, so that's an easy one. You've decided to be happy. So now let's talk about what's on everybody's mind right now. Frogs. Not bunnies, frogs. 3 frogs are on a lily pad. 2 decide to jump off. How many are left on the lily pad? All 3. Because 2 merely made the decision to jump off. We always say, I should be happier, I should lose weight, I should exercise more, we should all over ourselves. It's I must. The day that I decided I must, I owe it to myself, I owe it to my family, I got to figure this out, and I made the leap to be happy, that's when I started on this new path. Realization number 2, this is wonderful news for everyone. Happiness is actually our default setting. I always wondered, was that prosecutor born a jerk, or she just became that way? No, neither. I believe that people are inherently happy when they come out. I'll prove it to you. Who here owns a smartphone? Okay. You take it out of the box, and you pull it out. Back in the day, you had to plug it in. No, now you can use it right away. It comes with a default setting, a default state. The creators, the factory, set it to the ideal brightness, the perfect language, and you can use it right away. But what do? The schmucks we are, we change the settings. Oh, let's make it Chinese. Let's make it darker. Let's download apps that have viruses, and it becomes unusable. So what do? We hit the reset button, and we start all over, and it's back to perfect. Human beings, I believe, come out of their creators, from the factory, from our mothers, being happy. We screw ourselves up because we download all these thoughts that are of no service to us at all. So what we can do is, we don't have a reset button, but we can just go back and figure out how we got to that point. This, everybody, this was you. This was you. was us. What the hell happened to us? Now, we grow up to be teenagers, and if you're like my kids, they're not happy till they have the latest iPhone. And then as adults, we're not happy until we become Florida Supreme Court justices. Or we're not happy till we get a raise. We're not happy until and unless. What happened? It's because we learned, we were trained to believe, erroneously, that happiness comes from the outside. Right? We're told at a very young age, here, say mama, say dada. And then you repeat those words, and like me and my wife did, yay, good boy, good girl. And then you take those first steps, good boy, good girl. It's intoxicating. You want more of that. You want the gold star from the teacher. I wanted every debate trophy there was. It didn't even matter how I got it. I just wanted it. If I had to cheat, I'll cheat. Whatever it takes. I just want the happiness from the outside. In the law profession, whatever it takes, we want to be in that Florida bar news. We want people to say, you're a great lawyer, you're the best. No. I thought if I just made a certain amount of money, I'll be happy. Well, that came and went. Most lottery winners, they're broke and they're miserable. They wish it didn't happen, right? We heard one speaker talk about this earlier. This is the right formula, not what we've been told. We've been told, sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. You'll have success, and when you have success, you'll be happy. That's what I thought. If I could just get on this show, I'll be happy. Things will be great. If I could just, if, and it never came. I turned 50 recently, very recently, and I'm going, what the hell happened here? The key is to be happy right now, and then the success, my goodness, it comes. Realization number 4, your brain is not always serving you well. It is not. Let's talk about that. Before I talk about how the brain isn't always your friend, let's give it props. Let's talk about how wonderful it is. It is made up of 200 billion neurons, hundreds of trillion connections. It is the most complex machine on the planet. Way to go, brain. You do such magnificent things. Anybody sitting here thinking about how their heart's going to have to pump blood to their body, or anybody thinking about their lungs, right? No, your brain allows you to do this. Maybe it shouldn't, you know? You could do wonderful things. It actually saves your life. It told you that you needed to be somewhere else, so you're leaving the room. That's wonderful. That's okay. It really does save your life, right? He needs to know that that red stuff is blood, and that means there might be a shark. And these people need to know, my goodness, I need to get out of the water. Let me tell my feet to move quickly and get out of there. The brain's wonderful, right? Okay. But then there's this. Does this look familiar? I call that incessant thought. The average person has 50,000 thoughts per day. But we as lawyers, we ain't average. I'm thinking maybe 200,000 a day. 300,000 for some who are billing for it. Constantly, there is a flow of thoughts. I'm going to let you all into my brain. This is what it looked like, okay? It's crazy. And what are those thoughts that our brain, that organ, is sending to us? What are those thoughts? Fear. We'll get back to fear in a moment. It belittles us. You're no good. It disciplines us. I lose debates in my own head with myself all the time. It criticizes and compares. You'll never be like this lawyer. You'll never be like him. What does that do to me? Fear. I believe everything is either love or fear. Love is when you see that bunny and you go, look how beautiful that is. That's life. That's wonderful. Love is being in front of you, feeling the energy, committed to changing what's happening in our profession. Fear is false evidence appearing real. We think of the worst case scenario. What if I don't get the outcome for my client? What if he's got to go to prison? What if the judge treats me in that way the other judge treated me? What if this? What if I can't pay for my kid's school? What if, what if, what if? That's not being loving to yourself. That's not being of any service to yourself. I suggest to you, rather, that you're in the business of isness. Radical acceptance is another way to look at it. And that is, if you're running late to court, there's two reactions. Oh my God, oh my God. Or, let me just take it easy. Maybe if I rush, there'll be a car accident and my timing will cause me to have a problem. How about the people who are late to work? People who are late to work, they get crazy. What about the people who showed up late to work on the day that the towers went down in New York? Or how about a woman who missed her train in England? She waited 4 hours. She was really upset. But during the 4 hours, she came up with this idea of a wizard. Boy, wizardry. Riding around on a broom. J.K. Rowling came up with Harry Potter because she missed her train. The final realization that I have for you folks is that happiness is in the present. It's right here, right now. When your brain, who I call Biff, by the way, Biff, from that bully in Back to the Future, because my brain will do that to me. When that organ sends me thoughts that serve me well, like, yeah, go to the bar, do it, go for it. Or when my brain sends me thoughts like, really? You're going to get up there and talk? It's very personal. They're not going to like what you have to say. Just don't go. You talk to your brain and say, I like those thoughts. Send me more like that. Or brain, that doesn't serve me well. It's a practice, like meditation that I do every day. It's a practice. But let's talk about being present. I'm going to end with this concept. Too much of us are focused on the past. I should have done this. I could have done this. Or we're focused on the future. Oh, my goodness. I wish that, So what happens is when you're focused on the past or you're focused on the future, you're pissing on today. Right now, this is a gift. That's why they call it the present. I thank you to the Florida Bar for giving me this opportunity. There's so much more. I ask you to allow me to be of service to you. I derive happiness and pleasure out of being of service. I learned that about myself. So go to speaktomark.com and reach out to me and allow me to help you. I will end with this quotation from Aristotle that I'm always reminding myself of, and that is, take charge of your thoughts. You can do what you will with them. And hopefully you choose happiness. Thank you. You were great, by the way. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing your mind over matter concepts. I know that they were really a lot of fun, and I'm sure they'll be put to great use. Our next speaker is Ellen Cohen. She is a lawyer in the entertainment business, and she's an entertainment lawyer in California. She's the founder of Contracts Matter. She currently consults at Sony Pictures Television at the vice president's level, business affairs. She's a certified executive coach, works with senior leaders and to maximize their professional potential and well-being. She's certified as a yoga teacher, a Reiki instructor, and does breath work. She has another company that works solely on the issues of well-being. And with that, we are welcome Ellen Cohen here to speak to us and provide us with information.
And you're feeling overwhelmed by it. Anybody feeling that way? Like all the things that you're thinking about, right? I know I would be. So one of the things, what does everybody say when, I got to stand over here, sorry. Okay. So what does everybody say when you're feeling really stressed out? Have you ever heard anyone say, take a deep breath, right? Well, there's actually science behind take a deep breath. So just for 1 second, let's just do that, just to center and be right here. I'm not going to bring out the crystals, even though I'm from California, but just take a deep breath. And exhale really slowly. It's the exhale that actually counts more than the inhale. You want to get rid of all that CO2 that's in your body. So we're going to actually talk about the science behind the breathing, and we're going to talk about the neuroscience of being stressed out, as well as how to shift into a mindset of well-being. Okay, let me see how to do this. Oh, that wasn't how you do it. Oh, there it was. Nope. Yes. Okay. So the autonomic nervous system, some people have already mentioned it before, and this is where you are, it's like the motherboard of your entire system, and it's what unconsciously regulates your entire bodily functions, from your heart rate, digestion, breathing, and even urination. And it's comprised of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is commonly known as fight or flight or freeze, or rest and digest and relaxation. I'm sure most of you have heard of fight or flight or rest and digest. Maybe not rest and digest, but that's the parasympathetic nervous system. And one of the things about the parasympathetic nervous system, I'm not going to get into, but I'm just totally fascinated with the vagus nerve. It's VAGUS, and it actually is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. There are lots of articles on my website about it, but it is mind-body connection. It runs from your brain all the way through every organ of your body, and it's part of the parasympathetic nervous system, and it's really fascinating. Okay, so we're going to start with talking about the sympathetic nervous system, which is known as fight or flight or freeze, and you can see the deer in his state of freeze, and this is where you're reactive, stressed, emotional, and when you're also in a state of distrust. And I think we were hearing that's when you're irrational, when you're going to be doing things like honking your horn, cutting people off, and you're overly emotional. And this is when your body is releasing the stress hormone, including norepinephrine, adrenaline, and cortisol, and the blood is in the extremities and not in the brain or the organs. And this is a great state if you need to have like instant responsiveness, and if you need to lift something when you're in the state of stress or even fighting. I mean, this is an okay thing, but it's when it's too much, when it becomes chronic, that it's a problem. And then the parasympathetic nervous system, which is known as rest and digest, as well as the relaxation state. It's when you're in your logical and analytical and self-monitoring executive brain. We'll look at the brain next, but that's in the front of your brain. It's the most developed part of your brain. The fight or flight is actually in your primitive brain. It's the base of your brain is the oldest part of your brain. And this is where you have increased serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin, and the blood is in the organs to perform the basic bodily functions, which is called the rest and digest. If you have ever noticed when you're super relaxed and your hands are on your stomach, if you're gurgling, that's because you're there. And again, back to that vagus nerve, the vagus nerve actually helps create the serotonin, and you actually have most of your serotonin in your gut, but that's a whole nother conversation. And also, this is the state where you're actually able to have the most trust, and you're able to connect mostly with other people, as when you're in the state of your parasympathetic nervous system. So there's your brain. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but you can see all the different functionalities. The frontal lobe on the far right, the prefrontal cortex, is the place where you're going to be in your parasympathetic nervous system, and the brain stem, all the way over here on the right, is the primitive brain, the oldest brain. And that's the more reactive part of your brain. So what is stress or distress when you're in the state of chronic stress? So again, a little bit of stress, not so bad. It's when it's chronic that it becomes a problem. And so I've just grabbed some definitions here. It's a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances, physical, chemical, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension and may be a factor in disease causation, and a specific response by the body, stimulus as fear or pain that disturbs or interferes with the normal physiological equilibrium of an organism. Again, this is the fight or flight state of mind. And just quickly looking at So a lot of us like to be in the state of stress, just a little bit, right? That's where we think we get their maximum performance. And that's true. When a little pressure is the area of our best performance, when we don't have a lot to do, I don't know about you, but I'm bored and I hate that. There's that place where you feel just enough pressure where you really can manage everything. And then there's a place when you go into that high anxiety space. And I always call it where I'm juggling plates and putting out fires. And so if I try to juggle plates with one hand, they all fall if I try to put out fires. So you have to manage it. So that's when you get into that high stress state of mind. And that stress curve response has, there's an impact when you go from that comfort zone and you start to fall off into the distress zone where you start to have the exhaustion, the ill health, and breakdown. And I think we heard how that impacts you when you're completely overwhelmed and you fall into that, when you have the breakdown, when you're overwhelmed by everything going on. And the impact on your work performance, there's lack of, I think we are also hearing this, lack of focus, forgetfulness, inappropriate emotional responses, overload or inability to work, malpractice because you're forgetful, distracted, you're having lapses in detail, you're screaming at your clients, and there's an impact on the entire office when there's some bad apple in there. Everybody feels and notices that person. And so this is when you're in that fight or flight state and you're overly reactive, and what happens is the blood is not in your brain, it's in your extremities. So what are the physical indicators? And again, some of the other speakers have started to talk about this, but one of the physical indicators of chronic stress: high blood pressure, upset stomach, increased heart rate, sleep issues, gain or loss of weight, headaches, suppressed immune system. Obviously, just one of these maybe not the issue, but when you have a lot of them and you see it's long term and you're having a problem all the time, then that starts to be an indicator to think about, like, oh, am I in stress? And it's important so that when you can capture your stress at a point when you start to notice it, as opposed to when you get to that point where you explode. Here are the mental indicators for stress. You have the negativity. I think you all can read it. Negativity, anxiety, depression, fear, panic attacks, emotional outbursts, short temper, difficult concentrating, job dissatisfaction, low morale. And the other really big thing, and this is a really big issue for lawyers, is self-medication and binging substance abuse. And so that's something to be aware of. And substance abuse is not just substance abuse and is not just alcohol or drugs, but it can be food or shopping, or, well, that's not substance, but addictive behaviors. So stressed out lawyers make bad decisions. That's just a fact, and it's something we all need to be aware of. When we're not in a good state of mind, we're making bad decisions. There's just too much detail, and so 21% of licensed attorneys qualify as problem drinkers, 28% struggle with some level of depression, 19% demonstrate levels of symptoms of anxiety. Attorneys in the first 10 years exhibit incidents of these problems, the highest incident. And then I just got this really interesting fact yesterday. I was reading something. Psychological and physical cost of burnt out employees is estimated at $125 to $190 billion in healthcare spending in the U.S. That's like crazy, right? $190 billion, and that was from the Harvard Business Review, 2018. So again, number one concern for lawyers is self-medication and substance abuse when we're stressed out. So go back and look at the factors and think about, am I in that target zone, and what do I need to do about it? So, did I do it again? No. Okay, so we don't want to stay in that state of stress, right? We want to move into a nicer place. We want to be thinking like we're feeling like we're on an island. We want to activate the rest and digest system, the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's where we have the rational emotional responses, where we're able to concentrate and have reasoning and self-monitoring. We have the feelings of happiness and positivity. And this is also in the place where we're going to create the most trust, and we're going to be able to communicate more effectively with our colleagues. And so what's important about this. This is when the brain is most able to focus and you're most able to pay attention and listen. And neuroplasticity is when the brain builds neural pathways and you're learning and developing new ways of thinking. So that's a really important to be in this state of mind. Logical thinking, inhibition control, which is, again, you're not gambling, you're not binging, and intelligent, thoughtful communication. So again, we have the frog here. He's making a healthy choice, relaxing. And by the way, relaxation, the state of relaxation, really doesn't mean you're laying back. It means you're not in that state of chronic stress. It means that you're in your logical thinking, and the concept of relaxation is a little too broad. But so it's really important that we start to recognize when we're in that state, we figure out how to reverse it, and then we build resiliency so we can manage that stress and move to a state of calm. And so we were talking about looking at early detection, looking at the factors that we discussed here, and noticing whether it's in you or a colleague if they're exhibiting some of the factors that we were talking about. And then you want to reverse that by creating new habits and new practices so you can help manage the demands of your life, and build resiliency by creating new habits that are long-lasting, and you build a new internal infrastructure and perhaps a new way of thinking and a new way of evaluating your entire life choices. So how do we do that? So there's you can take a deep dive. I'm a coach, so life coach and executive coach. So you're taking a deep dive into your life choices. You want to take a look at your life. Like, how am I living my life? What are the choices I'm making? What is my perspective about my life? And start examining how you're living your life. And I think we've heard some of that about looking about your choices. And you can build in activities that are going to bring you joy and make you happy. Mindful habits. Meditation and mindfulness practice, breath work. And breath work, by the way, if anybody doesn't know what it is, it's actually the physiology of breathing. We all actually, many of us breathe incorrectly. I'm a yoga teacher, and I found out that I was breathing incorrectly. It's crazy. Relaxation techniques, including yoga, Reiki, walking, Tai Chi. Creating healthy habits, such as sleep and proper nutrition. It has a really big impact on your whole body. And exercise and personal development, learning new skills, building equanimity, peace, and tranquility, finding those quiet times, gratitude journals. Journaling apparently is one of the really great ways to calm your entire nervous system and really connect with yourself. And we just talked about gratitude, and finding gratitude is a really great way to calm yourself and really recenter, and spending time outdoors if that's what you enjoy, vacations, volunteering, compassion exercises, family and pets, because we all love our pets. And happiness hobbies, and that's something I just coined a little term for, just things that you find really relaxing and centering, that bring you down and bring you down from your stress. Bring you down. I just posted this article. There was a whole piece on knitting, and how knitting is this, like, the one of these big trends in relaxation, as well as painting or listening to playing music, hiking, gardening. It's very single-focused, it's quiet, you're by yourself, it's mindful. And I have a lot of articles on all of this on my Facebook page on You Matter Wellbeing, and you can find all kinds of research on that. So we want to manage that stress by building resiliency. And we started our today with taking a deep breath, and I was mentioning how a lot of us breathe incorrectly. So I want to take a moment to just maybe help everybody learn how to take a deep breath. And the thing about deep breathing is it really calms your nervous system, and it's something that you can do. Nobody will know if you're in your car and you got cut off. And I live in California, and we're in traffic, we get cut off all the time. It's like that's all you do. You're in your car every day, all the time. And so the breathing exercises, nobody has to know, and it's just super quiet, and it'll calm your entire nervous system really fast. And I just want to take a little moment to do that. I'm going to grab this chair. If everybody could just push their chair out just a little bit, away from the chair, away from the... Okay. So one of the things that we do when we take a deep breath, so I want everybody to take a deep breath, but I want you to notice when you take the deep breath, what is your body doing, okay? So everybody, you can close your eyes, you don't have to look at anybody. We all know how to take a deep breath. Just everybody take a really deep breath, like a really big breath. exhale. Let it go. Okay, what did you notice? So what I noticed when I first started doing this is that I lifted my chest way up, I pulled in my gut, and I was like, okay, I took the biggest breath ever, and now I'm exhaling. So it's actually a little backwards, because when you pull your belly in, it actually constricts your diaphragm from expanding. And when you breathe, you want your diaphragm to expand. When you lift up your shoulders like this, it actually restricts. Remember I was talking about that vagus nerve? Well, that vagus nerve is restricted when you do this. So you want to keep your shoulders down. So we're going to learn how to breathe correctly really quick. So I want you to just place your hands on your belly. And so when you breathe in, I want you to actually push out your belly. They call it a Buddha belly or a Santa belly. And it sometimes helps to just kind of like roll a little forward, like dropping your belly into your hand. So we're going to take a deep breath. And when you do it, when you exhale, we'll do it together. You're going to exhale, you're going to squeeze your belly button into your spine. You actually exhale, rounding your back. I'm exaggerating. So let me just show you. You inhale, rolling, filling up your belly, expanding, and exhaling, pressing your belly button into your spine. And if anybody does yoga, think about cat-cows. When you're inhaling, you reach up, inhale, and exhale. All right, this is really exaggerated, but this is just so you can practice. So you can practice the breathing. A lot of us do it backwards, and it takes a long time. Actually, if you're used to doing it backwards, then you'll end up inhaling and squeezing your belly in. No, it's inhale, you're bringing the air in to fill up your belly, and exhale. All right, let's all try that. And you can open your mouth. You can breathe in through your mouth. You can breathe in through your nose, whatever feels comfortable for you. And exhale, squeeze it. Let it go. And inhale, really big breath. Rocking forward. And exhale. Okay, so now you can practice that at home. And if this doesn't totally work for you, you can try it at home. You can actually put a book, lay on your back, and you can put a book on your belly. And when you breathe in, try to lift that book up. And exhale, press the book all the way down into your spine. So the key is not to be lifting up your shoulders, to be breathing into your belly, to expand your diaphragm, which actually expands your rib cage, which actually increases the space between your vertebrae, which actually helps many different systems. It actually creates more space for the vagus nerve, which, again, I love. We all should love it. And prevents disease and all kinds of high blood pressure. It reduces your heart rate. It improves your immune system. And all the things that stress causes, proper breathing decreases. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that, and you can continue to practice on your own. Thanks. Oh, and one other thing, I left some cards up there. If anyone's interested in a coaching session, I'll do 5 free coaching sessions talking about stress and well-being, and my card's up there. If you want to check out my Facebook page, I have all kinds of different articles on all of this stuff.
Thank you so much, Ellen. That was great. Didn't know I was breathing incorrectly, but now I know. Our next speaker is Christine Degnan, and she is a member of the Florida Bar. So she's a lawyer, but she's also a yogi. And she's come here today not only as an experienced lawyer, but as someone who has such great experience with yoga. And she is here to teach us some mindfulness in yoga and how it will change your law practice. Imagine that. So thanks for being here, and we look forward to hearing from you.
I'm here today to present the Yoga Remedy, and unlike most of the legal and equitable remedies that we lawyers are used to, the Yoga Remedy is available to everyone at any time in all situations. So before we begin our class, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. So I've been practicing law for 27 years, but I've been practicing yoga even longer. And for virtually all of that time, my law practice and my yoga practice were completely separate. In fact, they were totally compartmentalized. And the way that it worked was that the stress and the tension and the pressure of the yoga practice, of the law practice rather, you know what I'm talking about, It would build to a certain point, and then I would run over to the yoga practice to alleviate that. And this went on for years. And then a couple of years ago, I decided I'm going to delve a little bit more into the yoga practice. And I did some coursework, I got some certifications, and I was like, wait a second, yoga and law have a lot in common. Both require a degree of discipline, both require a certain amount of rigor, and both are practices. It's the practice of law, and it's a yoga practice. So the more you do them, the better you become. And I said, wait, I've been doing this wrong all these years. Instead of compartmentalizing these practices, I should have been integrating them. So I put together a program called Yoga-esque, and I bring yoga to lawyers at their offices to share with them what I've learned. And that is this. You will have more clarity, less stress. You will be more efficient and therefore more productive. Ding, ding, ding. And you will have what I call a greater sense of ease if you bring a yoga practice into your law practice. So let's start with the class. Any yoga class has 3 major components: breath work, known as pranayama, movement, called asana, and relaxation, which is called shavasana. And we do the first 2, the breath work and the movement, in order to get to that state of relaxation known as shavasana. It's almost as if yoga knows that we need to work a little to give ourselves permission to really surrender. All right, so let's get started. Enough about me. We're going to do a little bit of breath work. We already had a nice introduction to that. So please place one hand on your chest and one hand on your abdomen. It's a 4-part breath. The inhalation and the exhalation both come through the nose. The breath travels from the belly up to the throat, pause, and then it comes down. We breathe on a count of 4. If that doesn't work for you, try a 3-part breath. Don't get too hung up on it. It's not as complicated as it sounds. Just tune into your breathing. So let's begin. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, pause. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1, pause. Excellent. Let's try it again. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, pause. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1, pause. Please take that 2 more times on your own. And when you finish, go ahead and place your hands in your lap. Excellent. So the mood has settled a little bit. We've already prepared ourselves for the movement portion of the class. So we hold a lot of stress in our shoulders, our back, our neck, and we're going to do one movement to address all of those areas. Everyone just scoot your chair a teensy bit back so you have a little bit of room. And I'm going to demonstrate the first move, and then we'll do it all together. We're going to sweep our arms up, and then we're going to bring our fingertips behind our head. On an inhalation, you're going to bring your elbows behind you, press your chest forward, and bring your chin up. That's your inhalation. On the exhalation, it's the exact opposite. It's chin to chest, elbows together, around the back. And now come to neutral. So it's kind of a version of a cat-cow. Let's all try it together. Inhale, chest forward, elbows back, tilt the chin up. Beautiful. Exhale, chin to chest, elbows together, round out that back. Inhale, bring it all up. Beautiful. Exhale, round it out. Take that one more time on your own with your own breath. And then please go ahead and place your hands in your lap. All right, so we've addressed some of the areas of tension in our upper body, and now we're going to focus on our lower body. So I'd like you to take your right ankle and place it over your left thigh. You can flex that foot. Take your right hand and just gently press into your right knee. Now, I can already tell by the expression on some of your faces that you're already feeling this in the outside of your right hip. That's okay. Go ahead, breathe into that, honor that. If you want to explore more and you think you have more capacity, bring your palms together, and with those forearms, inhale and lean forward on the exhale, bringing the forearms to the leg. So now the feedback I'm getting from some of your faces is that you're feeling this. So think about this. If you cannot smile while you're doing this, then maybe you need to back off a little bit. It's called the smile test. All right, on an inhale, come on up. Release your hands, and don't miss the best part. Please uncross your legs and say, that should feel pretty good on the outside of the hips. Let's do the other side. Cross the left ankle. Flex that foot and take your left hand and gently press into your left knee. Each side's going to feel a little bit different. If you'd like, palms come together. Take a nice inhale and then exhale, forearms come to the lower leg. Keep breathing. We hold the pose, but not our breath. On an inhale, come on up. Release your hands, uncross your legs. Permission to say, So, the movement portion of any yoga class ends with a twist. I call it the final spinal, and we're going to do one right now. You're going to inhale, sweep your arms up. Take your right hand, bring it to the left side of your chair. Take your left hand, bring it to the back of your chair, and look to the left. There's your twist. If you want a little bit more, draw your chin toward your left shoulder. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, take it to the other side. So it's the left hand to the right side of the chair, the right hand to the back of the chair. You're looking to the right. There's your twist. If you want to twist a little bit deeper, you can draw your chin toward your right shoulder. Sit up nice and straight and continue to breathe. Inhale, sweep up. And exhale, hands come to your lap. So we've done the breath work, we've done the movement, and now we're ready for our Shavasana. So make sure you're sitting up nice and tall, get comfy. Close your eyes. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, then at least lower your lids. I'm going to play a short portion of a song. It's just to help you tune in a little bit. It's another tool in the toolbox. We have our breath. We have focal points. And we'll have the music. So it looks like everyone's ready now. I invite you to enjoy your Shavasana. When you're ready, please gently open your eyes. Thank you, Florida Bar, for joining the journey of a yoga attorney. It's been my privilege to share this practice with you. May each and every one of you be happy, may you be healthy, and may you be at ease. Namaste. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I can tell you that for me and the running around at the Florida Bar the last few days, which has been invigorating, that was really a really nice little break, and I certainly feel a lot better. Our last speaker today is Stacy Dugan. I've known Stacy, gosh, probably over 20 years. Our paths crossed again recently when I learned that she had become a therapist. And I know she was a very, very, very high-powered lawyer at a high-powered law firm and with children. And she obviously made a change in her life and decided to become a therapist. She's obviously an expert at dealing with people like us, people, lawyers, busy people. She really attempts at least to help her clients to find out what fuels their anxiety, to create opportunities to identify their strengths and weaknesses, and develop roadmaps to enable them to live better, happier lives. And she's here to share with us her mindfulness practice and her evidence-based approach to reducing stress, improving your legal practice again, and living your life probably in a better and healthier way. So thank you.
Friday afternoon, but I certainly feel nice and relaxed, that's for sure. So thank you both for those practices. I've been working with the Georgia Bar, because now I live in Atlanta, on their wellness and well-being initiatives, and so I was really grateful to get the invitation from Dory to come talk to the Florida Bar, because most of us are very aware. There's been a lot in the news lately. Lawyers are really struggling. We're struggling with under the weight of mental conditions like anxiety, stress, panic attacks, substance abuse, and suicide. And as we've heard from our speakers, in addition to or in place of mental health conditions, a lot of lawyers are just unhappy with their chosen profession. And we suffer with anxiety and stress higher than any other profession. And there's just no question that anxiety and stress cognitively and behaviorally affect our functioning. And so from an executive functioning standpoint, a lot of this is going to be reaffirmed from what you've already heard, which I think is probably good. But we know that it affects our ability to pay attention, to our long-term memory, problem solving. Mental health conditions can be created or exacerbated, like anxiety, stress. It definitely can interfere with our interpersonal relationships, and at worst, unabated, it can lead us right into burnout, which is a place where nobody wants to go because it can be a long way back. So a threshold question that's always interested me is, why are lawyers so particularly vulnerable to these issues? I mean, is it the chicken or the egg? Were we drawn to the law because we're stressed out perfectionists? Or did our legal experience and training make us that way? I would submit that it is the chicken. Because what we know is that law students heading into law school really aren't any different than other graduate students heading into other graduate programs. Rather, it seems to be the actual experience of the legal education itself, and Dr. Krieger has done a lot of really great work on this. It is the legal education. By the second year in law school, students are recognizing that there are shifts happening in terms of their own value and value set and happiness. So that experience, reinforced by the culture of the legal profession, seems to be what's getting a lot of us in trouble. One of the reasons that this could be is that a lot of the same attributes that make someone an excellent lawyer can also wreak havoc in their personal lives or for their health. There appear to be certain personality traits and skill sets that lawyers have that separate us from other professions. The New York Times interviewed one lawyer who had previously been addicted to methamphetamines about being a lawyer, and he said it this way. He said, being a surgeon is stressful, for instance, but not in the same way. It would be like having another surgeon across the table from you trying to undo your operation. In the law, we are financially rewarded for being hostile. Now, being aggressive and defensive and argumentative can serve us really well in the courtroom and in the boardroom when we're negotiating tough contracts. The problem happens when those behaviors start to leak into other areas of our lives. Say when we start to cross-examine our partner or our kid when we're arguing with them. And please tell me I'm not the only one who's ever done that. Okay. So those kinds of behaviors actually drive, can drive stress, anxiety, and bad behavior with lawyers, as we heard. Sometimes our behavior really does start to get out of control because we are so keyed up. So let's drill down from the adversarial nature of our profession to the life of an individual lawyer. By show of hands, how many of you regularly have the experience of closing the door to your office, leaving everything that happened during the day behind that closed door so that you are able to turn your full attention to your family, friends, and leisure? That's what's happening. And even the metaphor of closing a door is a little absurd in this hyper-technical era that we live in, when we are being bombarded 24/7 with emails and messages, and a lot of times actually expected to respond to them 24/7. So is it any surprise when we are keyed up like this, when our nervous system is so activated that we forget how to let go, that we don't know how to play or have fun anymore? What happens is that we stay with this heightened vigilance, keeps us in, as we've talked about before, a chronic state of fight, flight, or freeze. And it's the amygdala of the brain, the part of the brain that one trauma researcher calls the smoke screen of the brain that's always scanning the environment for risk or danger. It's also the part of the brain that causes us to quickly swerve out of the way if there's an oncoming car. And that's a really good thing, because the amygdala actually is our warning sign. It's our warning system to tell us that we need to take action to save our lives. It's instantaneous, it's unconscious, it causes us usually to act reflexively and without thinking. And again, that's a good thing. You don't want to think too long before you decide to swerve out of the way of an oncoming car, right? The problem is that, and this has been alluded to before, over time, we may begin to react to the threat of a danger as the same as we would to the danger itself. So the thought of a car swerving in front of us can activate us as though the car was actually swerving in front of us. And needless to say, that can drive chronic stress and really affect our minds and our bodies. When this happens, what's going on is our brain literally gets hijacked. And we lose the power to choose how to respond to what's happening in front of us. Instead, we wind up reacting to it. Oftentimes, we wind up acting without thinking. That's good when you're trying to avoid a swerving vehicle. It may not be so good when you're having interactions with other people or trying to do your job. Because the reality of it is, and this was alluded to also, the reality of it is, contrary to the illusion of many lawyers who think that we can control people and circumstances around us, we actually have very little control about what's going on in our lives. Think about it. You can't control the timing of a client's emergency. You can't control the behavior of opposing counsel. You can't control your facts. You can't control a jury's deliberation. But yet we spend so much of our time and energy trying to control these external factors that we literally can't control. And when that happens, we wind up with no power. Now, people don't like to hear that, especially lawyers, but I'm not saying that we don't have any power, period. What I'm saying is that we need to understand where that power is and how to harness it so that we can use it to our advantage. Because our power comes not from reacting to external stimuli around us. It comes from increasing our capacity to choose our response to it. And there's a really big, important distinction between reaction and response. Reaction stems from impulse. It's driven by the amygdala, the emotional part of the brain. Again, we heard a lot about the brain already. A response stems from cognition, the thinking part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex that's responsible for executive functioning and top-down control of our attention. So the good news is that we actually can influence which part of our brain is activated when we're going through this process. And that is through what I call the power of the pause. Because simply pausing, even if it is one breath before you answer the telephone, one pause between a stimulus and a response gives us the ability to act in a way that we want to, with intentionality, with control. We can control our attention. Because what it does is that it weakens the connection between the amygdala and the rest of the brain, and it strengthens the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the rest of the brain. So again, we are literally able to try to sort through what part of our brain we want to engage at a particular moment in time. And thanks to neuroplasticity, we have the power to rewire our brain every time we use it. Every single day, we have the power to rewire our brain. And one of the most powerful practices available to us is mindfulness. Through mindfulness, we can move from striving to control external events. As was said earlier, it either usually happened in the past or we're worried it's going to happen in the future, and we can move to controlling our response in the present. Mindfulness really does improve our ability to choose to what and how we pay attention. So let's start with a definition. Mindfulness is simple. It's paying attention on purpose in the present moment. I know this like by heart. I can't believe I did that. Non-judgmentally. It's a simple definition. It's elegant. It's succinct. But what I say to my clients, it's simple, but that doesn't mean that it's easy. It's important to know that there are many types of mindfulness, and there are many types of meditation. Generally speaking, meditation is considered the formal practice of mindfulness. I'm going to make it a little bit confusing to tell you that what we're going to focus on for the next few minutes is mindfulness meditation. And mindfulness meditation is also called choiceless awareness, because the goal of it is not to reach some desired state or process. It is literally to focus on the breath. The breath is the anchor of any mindfulness meditation. Now, I love talking about mindfulness meditation with lawyers because we can complicate anything, and this is no exception. I promise you, you do not have to read 10 books and go on a 30-day silent retreat in India before you can do this correctly. Okay, so I have a clip that I want to show you, and I think it does a nice job of setting the tone with which I'd like for us to be able to continue.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you, rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, who's chasing you? But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in. They showed that physical exercise is really good for you. And now all of us do it. And if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribes for you. Let me just close by saying mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower and one that is accessible by you immediately.
So did you guys like that? I have watched that thing 1,000 times, and I love it every time. Dan Harris, the guy who developed it and narrated it, is an ABC News correspondent who actually had a panic attack on live air, and he does 10% Happier. He's got a podcast. It's great stuff. He really has done a great job in trying to spread awareness. So the benefits of mindfulness meditation for lawyers have been well documented, and as you can see, they really do help us with our executive functioning skills, with emotional reactivity, which is probably one of the most important aspects of it, because we keep talking about when we get triggered emotionally, how that can spill out into other relationships and circumstances and get us in trouble. And I also like the last one, the increased self-acceptance and compassion. As you were saying, that inner critic that's always telling us, like, whatever we're doing is wrong and just doesn't stop talking. I find mindfulness meditation a very forgiving practice, and I have noticed that it actually has quieted the voice in my head. She's still there, but not so noisy anymore. So I just want to go over a very few practice pointers. I'm going to keep it simple because it really isn't complicated. And just like Christine said, just like yoga, just like law, mindfulness is a practice. It is a discipline that we practice for the purpose of doing it. I've had clients ask me, well, how long do I have to do this? I'm like, however long you want to enjoy the benefits of it, really, because it's not a bridge to anywhere. It is the destination for us. And then our posture, you can sit, you can stand, you can lay down, you can walk. There are all different types of meditation. I really encourage you just to play with it. Don't feel like you have to be too serious about it. And if something's not working for you, we were talking earlier, sometimes people might want a guided meditation. Sometimes people might not want any voice, or they might want music. There are all different types of options available, so there's no reason not to find something that doesn't resonate with you. We want to focus on an aspect of the breath. We've heard a lot about the breath today because it just cannot be overstated how important the breath is in terms of calming down our central nervous system. And so we can pay attention to the breath in the way that it was said before, the air coming in and out of your nostrils, your belly rising, your chest rising. And so that is the anchor. We are always going to come back to the breath. And then we're going to notice the thoughts that go through our mind. And what I'd like for you to think is the idea, and I'd love to do this more than I do. I hardly ever do it. I probably have done it 4 times in my life. But imagine laying on the grass and looking up at the sky, a beautiful blue sky with white puffy clouds. And we just watch those clouds move through the sky. We don't try to stop them. We don't try to push them. We just watch them leave our field of vision. And that can be a helpful way to think about or to notice your thoughts. We're not trying to push away a negative thought, and we're not trying to grasp onto a positive thought. We want to be neutral and just let them pass. And the way we do that is that we bring ourselves back to the breath. Now, most people feel like when they have gotten distracted that they made a mistake, like that's an epic fail. Oh, God, I can't keep my mind blank. But mindfulness isn't about keeping your mind blank, because it is the nature of the mind to be distracted. That's what our mind does. So what our work is recognizing when we've drifted and simply bring our attention back to our breath. And it really is that simple. And you find it drifting and you bring it back. And if you do it 100 times, that's okay, because that literally is the practice. Because when you think about the bigger goal of mindfulness, it is to be able to do this throughout the day and other aspects of our lives, right? Not only when we're meditating. So when we recognize that we've drifted and we come back to the breath, that's the way that we learn when we're in the middle of a hearing, or we're in the middle of a conversation, or we're in the middle of a game, and all of a sudden we realize we've drifted, and we bring our attention back to the breath. So I feel like mindfulness, like Dan Harris said, I really do think that it is our superpower. I really feel like it weaves in and out of everything that we've talked about before. I think it's very related to radical awareness. And what I just want to leave you with is recognizing just one moment of attention to the breath can give you the opportunity to come back into the present. And we can do it anytime, anywhere. Mindfulness it allows us to change our brain by how we use it. That's it. It's that simple. And through mindfulness, we get to work to change the things we can, which is us, and stop fighting to change the things we can't, which is everything else. That is where the real power is. So thank you very much.
I know we ran a little late, but I have to tell you, I've attended many, many, many seminars in my career as a lawyer with the Florida Bar, and I got, I think, more out of this than I got out of maybe 16 hours of family law hours, and hopefully I'll be able to practice a little better. My clients will be a little happier. My family will be a little happier. And I can't thank all of you enough. And I want to point out that although all of these speakers spoke from the heart and had great insight into breathing and meditation and yoga and other processes by which we can sort of improve our lives, they're all lawyers. And so I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. And as a lawyer, I want to say thank you to the lawyers who have really championed this well before I did, and sharing your thoughts and your feelings about where you've come from and where you're going to, because I know part of this process is hearing from other successful people and how they've navigated those issues. So thank you very much.